All right, hello everyone. My name is Shauna. I am one of the dietitians at Healthy Weight Management and Bariatric Surgery and also the program coordinator. For those of you just starting the program, this is obviously not how we envision our education process through this interesting time in our lives, but we are trying to adapt as best we can to keep people going through and making healthy lifestyle changes to help meet goals through this challenging time. So we are going to get started here. This is our Group 1 class. This is, the first half will be nutrition education and the second half will be done by our exercise physiologist about exercise. Basically, this presentation is to help prepare you for surgery, lifestyle changes to start working on now. We do want to make sure that you are set up and ready for this journey as best you can be. We want you to be prepared and give expectations from the beginning. So some of these things do not apply right now because we are not in person. We do want everybody to attend a support group in one way or another. They are typically held the first Thursday of every month at our facility from 6 to 7:30, and we do keep a schedule of that available at the front desk. So timeline for surgery, you've all done the information seminar, either online or in the past on person. You will have a consultation with your surgeon. And then this is the Group 1 class. This is what we call the Group 1 class. After that, you will all complete 3 to 6 months of an education program based on your insurance requirements. Everybody has to do at least the 3-month program. That is our program that we require for everyone. You'll have 3 individual visits with the dietitian, at least, and then at least 2 one-on-ones with the exercise physiologist. And then we also have, for the 6-month program, we have 2 additional small group classes. You'll have to complete your medical clearances, whether that's cardiac clearance, pulmonary clearance, and then your psychological evaluation. Attend a support group, and then your case is reviewed by the bariatric team. That's basically making sure everybody has what they need before submitting to your insurance. We do have program requirements, and a lot of insurances now have requirements that you must lose weight during the pre-op program. So we just want your weight to be trending down. Your surgery is scheduled after all the pre-op requirements are met. So the whole goal of the preoperative nutrition counseling, we do take pride in the fact that our program does have one-on-one meetings with the exercise physiologists and the dietitians because everybody's different. Everybody has different schedules, different lifestyles, different routines, different family support or family structure or types of people they live with. So we ultimately just want this to adapt to you. This is not a cookie cutter diet. We don't even like to use that word too much because this is not a diet. This is not a fad diet that you may have tried in the past. This is working to make changes that you know you can stick to, realistic ones. We want to prepare you for surgery. We want you to effectively use your new tool, which we call the surgery. It's a surgical tool to be used appropriately after surgery. We want to help you reach not just your weight loss goals, but your health goals, the goals that you may have, the list of bucket list things that you want to do or be able to do with your healthier lifestyle, and to also guide you in keeping that weight off long term because it's not just a short-term commitment. This is lifelong. Okay. Today's nutrition topics, we are going to talk about how this surgery affects your nutrition. We're going to talk about eating habits and food choices for pre and post surgery, how that will look different. Sources of your macronutrients. So macronutrients are protein, carbohydrates, and fats. The importance of keeping food logs, and then how to start and some of the goal setting. You should receive at some point in the program a program manual. We also have that available online on our website, but that program manual gives you instructions on a lot of information for preoperative changes, post-op things, a lot of guidance, how to read food labels, just general information about the surgeries and post-op lifestyle. So to start, we want to talk about the lifetime changes to the anatomy. For both surgeries, whether you're having the sleeve gastrectomy or the Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. The Roux-en-Y is there on the left, the sleeve is on the right. Both of them you are going to have a smaller stomach size, reduced surface area. For both of these surgeries, that means you're going to have a decreased ability to break down food into smaller pieces. You're going to be doing a lot more chewing, a lot more taking your time, smaller bites. This is also going to create a decreased ability to digest carbohydrates and fats. Some of you may have heard or known people that have the Roux-en-Y gastric bypass and heard of the dumping syndrome. Yes, the dumping syndrome is more common in the gastric bypass. Not everybody gets the dumping syndrome though, and some people who had gastric bypass sometimes wish they did, so they would be not as tempted by those sweets that they were in the past. But basically what that is an intolerance to the high sugar load and high fat load after surgery. So anything that's really high sugar, fried foods, high fat foods, they are not tolerated well afterwards. Now, just because you have the sleeve does not mean those things will not happen. It's not called the dumping syndrome in sleeve because your intestine is not interrupted. However, a lot of times there still are decreased ability to digest that high sugar and high fat loads. So sleeve patients often will respond that same way to those foods. Decreased ability to absorb your vitamins and minerals. For both surgeries, vitamins are recommended for life. We can't stress that enough, that for both of them you will have to take vitamins for life. The Roux-en-Y gastric bypass has a little more risk in deficiencies, specifically with iron deficiency. So if you do have a history of iron deficiency, we would probably suggest leaning towards the sleeve. So next we're going to talk about some of the necessary changes in eating habits. So one thing to start with is the smaller, more frequent eating points. This does not mean that if you have heard in the past, oh, I have to have 6 to 7 small meals per day or anything like that. We want you to think of it more as start with having 3 meals a day. Some people already do that. Some people may only have 1 meal a day or 2 meals a day. So we want you to look at this as how can I get 3 eating points per day? Slow, mindful eating habits and drinking, taking your time, high protein intake. Protein is going to be one of the most important things that we are talking about throughout the pre-op program because that's what your surgery works off of. Number 4, lower sugar, lower carb intake, not no carb, but lower carb. And then vitamins for life. So I'm going to go down through each one of these individually and break them into some points, things to start working on now. So the smaller, more frequent eating points, 3 meals a day. We want to avoid that skipping of meals. Times may vary depending on your sleep or work schedule. So night shift workers, your meals are going to look more like meal 1, 2, and 3. When you wake up, you have meal 1. You have meal 2 when you're in the middle of the night on your shift. And you have meal 3 when you come home. Rather than talking breakfast, lunch, dinner, because some shift workers may call it dinner, lunch, breakfast, we want to think of it as meal 1, 2, and 3. Meal replacement protein shake may be used for just 1 meal if you're not hungry for food at that time. I know a lot of people say, oh, I'm not hungry in the morning. I am not a breakfast eater. I'm not a breakfast eater because I'm not hungry, or I'm not a breakfast eater because I don't have time, or I'm not a breakfast eater because I get nauseous in the morning. A protein shake is a really good option for somebody who needs to start incorporating that 3rd meal. Some people are too busy during the day to stop and eat lunch. That would be an idea to have a protein shake at that 2nd meal. But we don't want you relying on them for all your meals, just 1 if you do struggle with that meal skipping. Pre-planning meals, making your grocery lists ahead and sticking to them is very important. So sitting down, it only takes 5 minutes to think through your week and think, okay, I need a vegetable for every night. I need a protein source for every night, and let's get some healthy carbs in there for the dinners. What do I want to have for breakfast? Some people are creatures of habit for breakfast and they only have 1 or 2 options. That's fine too. So sit down, plan that grocery list and stick to it. It's so tempting when we walk in the doors of the grocery stores and see the baked goods right there, or we see the buy one, get one tasty cakes and sweets, trying to walk past that and say, nope, not on my list. Because when you have a list, you'll probably stick to it a little bit better, and you might end up saving money. I know I do hear a lot of times it's expensive to eat healthy. Well, that depends on how you look at it, because you might be saving a lot of money from things that you shouldn't be buying or could maybe keep out of your home environment, that you can end up putting that money towards some healthier food items. Cooking in bulk and freezing or using these foods throughout the week is very helpful, especially if you do not care for cooking or if you don't have much time to cook. So a lot of times just taking advantage of a night or 2 a week that you are cooking whether you're cooking for a family or you're cooking for just yourself, make several portions. Those portions you can end up freezing if you don't want to eat things 2 or 3 days in a row, or you can just end up having that the next 2 days, whether that's for lunch and dinner or 2 lunches for the week, however that may look for you. I do admire people that can cook on the weekends for the whole entire week. They meal plan. We have patients that do that so great. They plan all their lunches for the week, they cook them on the weekends, they plan out their dinners and do the same thing. I'm not one that can do that. I could never seem to pull that off. I tend to do the more 20 to 30 minute meals every evening, just have quick, easy things on hand that I can have lean proteins, vegetables every night, quick dinners, or lots and lots of crock pot meals that are balanced. So everybody has to kind of find what works for them. Planned portion snacks. So here comes the snacks into all of this. 1 or 2 per day if you need them. If you don't need your snacks to carry you through to the next meal, that is fine. But ultimately, you may find that if you have a lunch and your dinner is not going to be for 7 or 8 hours later, even 6, 7 hours later, that's a long time to go without eating. And a lot of people struggle then with getting hungry and being famished by the time dinner comes around. And then what happens when we're famished? It's hard to control portions, so overeating may occur. So keeping that in mind, and or if you get home from work and that's a struggle time where you find yourself picking and snacking a lot, have a snack before you get home so that hunger is not as prevalent and you're not as tempted to just dive right into whatever may be around. So 1 or 2 high protein snacks per day. We want to try to keep protein at all our eating points. Keep snacks to less than 200 calories if possible. And then the big thing with snacking is we want to have them planned to 1 or 2 per day. We want to avoid the continuous picking, or what some might call grazing or snacking. So that just grabbing one little piece here, another piece there, another bite there, those things add up. So if anybody logs their intake or keeps track of the little pieces of, it could just be little pretzels, it could be crackers, it could be chips or candy, whatever it might be, those things add up sometimes to a very significant amount. I've had patients that may eat just one main meal per day and say, I really don't eat that much throughout the day. And then when they really think about it, the little bit of this, the little bit of that ends up being several meals worth of calories, that unconscious eating that we can all fall into at times. A couple things to think about that can be real triggers for some people. Food in the bedroom. So eating in bed, eating in front of the TV, that unconscious eating can be a very difficult behavior pattern to break and lead to a lot of that unconscious eating. So some rules to think about if you do struggle with some of that. Eliminating food from the bedroom is a good rule to have. That eliminates eating in front of the TV for some. If you do eat in front of a TV at any time, just make sure you are portioning a snack. Even if it's something that may not be the healthiest, portion it into a small bowl and that's all you get. Put the bag or box away. That leads us to the last one, no eating out of bags or boxes unless it's a 100-calorie pack or something that's one portion size. Because when we open a bag, open a box, again, that unconscious eating, suddenly what happened to the whole bag? I don't know. I wasn't even paying attention. Very easy to fall into those things. So again, portion control is very important, and thinking about your environment, where you're eating, when you're eating is very important as well. Slow, mindful eating and drinking. This becomes very important, especially those first few months after surgery, because you will be forced to eat very, very slow. You want to be mindful about how much you're eating, even how much you're portioning yourself, and also mindful about your drinking. So smaller plates can sometimes help for some people to avoid over-serving. Serve your own portions. Don't let someone else serve your plate because they don't know how much you should be having or how much you tolerate or kind of want to dish. So think about that when you're dishing, and things look a lot bigger when you're putting them on a small plate. Smaller utensils, using baby forks and spoons can force you to have smaller bites and slow down. I know that's what I'll do sometimes if I find myself eating too fast. I have toddler spoons and forks in the house and I'll just pick up those, and it really does force you to slow down. Chew your foods well. Take your time with chewing. And then another thing that you're going to need to do is sip liquids very slow and not drink with meals. So if you're a fast drinker, you gulp throughout the day. If you drink a lot with your meals, these are habits that you're going to have to work on changing, because after surgery, if you're eating, you will not be able to drink liquid on top of that. Your stomach will be too full. It's kind of like a high pressure system, and that water will either come back up or feel really full all the way up to your esophagus. So you'll be able to drink between your meals, but you will have to stop drinking about 10 minutes before your meal and then wait about 40 to 45 minutes after until you can start drinking again. So slow drinking throughout the day, carry water with you. That's going to be very important. Finally, eliminate liquid calories. Liquid calories can come in all kinds of forms. It can be coffee drinks like the frappuccinos and cappuccinos. It can be juices. Even 100% juice is all concentrated sugar. Iced tea, sweetened regular sodas, milk. Milk is good for you, but we don't recommend more than a cup per day because, again, that's just added liquid calories. So we want to be cautious about those liquid calories and be gradually decreasing them as we get closer and closer to surgery. Some people can do that cold turkey. Some people need to do that gradually. So you decide what your goal is going to be for that. But that's an easy way to get rid of a whole lot of calories from your day if you do drink a lot of sugary beverages. Drinks that will be okay to drink, there's Gatorade Zero, there's Propel Zero, there's the Vitamin Water Zero, there's Crystal Light, Weiler's Light, some of those Mios and water flavorings, those are all fine. And then good old water, of course, is the best. We're going to need to temporarily eliminate caffeine. You'll be fine to do that about a month or so after surgery again, but we want to eliminate that temporarily because caffeine is a stomach irritant. So we're going to advise you to wean off your caffeine before surgery gradually, just because withdrawal right before surgery is not going to go well. So we'll just have you gradually wean off of that temporarily. Avoid carbonation, just so you're not dependent on carbonation. Some people further out from surgery will be able to tolerate, a seltzer water or a diet soda on occasion. But the carbonation does typically cause some pain and discomfort those first few months after surgery. So that's why we say, don't be dependent on the carbonation. Let's wean off of that too. Okay, so high protein intake. Again, this is how your surgical tool works. So if you're not familiar with what foods have protein, protein is found in the following: all your meats, red meats, poultry, that's chicken, turkey, fish, seafood of any kind, eggs, beans have protein as well, and then your low-fat dairy products. Choosing those whole food proteins most is going to be the most beneficial for you. Protein stays in your stomach longer. It provides energy longer than carbohydrates, so it's going to therefore keep you fuller longer. Even pre-op patients, as they're making lifestyle changes and increasing the protein in their intake, they find, I'm not as hungry as I used to be now that I'm eating more protein. So if you have a meal that has protein versus a meal that does not have protein, you will find that you're satisfied a whole lot longer. Protein shakes and bars, meal replacements like that, they are supplemental protein. So we don't want to think of that as replacing all of our protein at meals, but again, like I had mentioned before, having a protein bar or shake as a meal supplement would be fine. The guidelines for those, however, is we want to look for low sugar protein shakes and bars. So look at that food label, turn it around, and look for the grams of sugar. If the grams of sugar are single digits, so under 10 grams, around that 8 or 9 or less, that's what we want for keeping the sugar low. We don't want anything with double digits of sugar. There are foods I will mention that do have natural sugar, and that would be our fruits and dairy. So yogurt has some natural sugar in it, and fruits have natural sugar. But again, when it comes to juices, we want to avoid those 100% fruit juices because it takes a lot of oranges to make a cup of orange juice. It takes a lot of fruits to make that concentrated juice. It's better to just eat a fruit as opposed to the juice. So again, the reason protein is so important after surgery, if we're not getting enough protein, we are going to lose lean body mass and energy. So lean body mass is our muscle mass, and after surgery we are going to be losing weight rapidly. We want to lose mostly fat mass. You will lose some lean body mass, some muscle mass as you're losing weight, but we want to maintain as much of that as we can. And in order to do that, that's where the protein comes in. We need to make sure we're meeting protein goals, getting protein at every eating point, because initially starting out, our eating points are going to be very, very small portions. I did already mention it provides energy longer and it remains in the stomach longer than carbs do, so it will keep you fuller longer. Here's a list of some proteins. There are proteins that are leaner than others. Therefore, the lean ones are going to have half the amount of calories as the high fat ones. At the top of the list on the left, you'll see the lean proteins, things like chicken that's not fried or breaded, turkey, fish that's not fried or breaded, shellfish, low sodium deli meats, turkey and chicken sausage, 90% lean, any type of, could be beef, venison, buffalo, turkey, and then your lean pork. The higher fat proteins that you want to steer away from, it doesn't say that you can never have them, but keep these minimal. Fried meats, 85% lean or less than that. Ground meats are really high in fat. Breaded meats, sausage, ribs, hot dogs, wings should be on this list too. Those are a lot higher in calories or fat than the ones above. On the right, we have a picture of a very small chicken breast, which is the size of a deck of cards. So this is 3 ounces. A deck of cards is about 3 ounces of a protein source. So we have a high fat 3 ounce, a high fat 3 ounce portion is going to be double the calories than a 3 ounce lean portion. So in saying that, if you are choosing lean proteins, it's okay to liberate that protein portion if you are still hungry. So I often will tell patients that are still struggling with hunger, if this is a drastic change from the portion that you're used to, let's just liberate that lean protein. Let's stick to the lean ones, and I'm fine with you having a 4 or 5 or 6 ounce portion. That's fine, to make sure you're maintaining that hunger. I'd rather you do that than increase your potatoes or your rice or end up snacking on simple carbs later in the evening. But that's just kind of a guide there for your portions. Next, we want to be decreasing our sugar and carb intake. Again, this is not keto. We are not eliminating carbs. We are just decreasing carbs because carbs tend to be the highest amount in most people's diets. And we want to just gradually decrease that so that we can take the place of the carbs with more protein and more high fiber vegetables. So I already mentioned the goal for sugar is less than 10 grams of sugar. Dairies and fruits do contain some natural sugars, and those are okay. Replace some of the carbs on your plate in recipes with more veggies and more protein. So I kind of call this diluting your meals with protein. So if you have a pasta dish, for instance, don't just put sauce on it and call it a day. You need to add some meat in that sauce, and not just a jar of meat sauce. That's not near enough. So add some turkey meatballs, add some chicken sausage, add some ground turkey or lean ground beef or shrimp. Just making sure you add some type of protein to that meal. And then add a vegetable to it as well. And then get rid of maybe a good half portion of the pasta that you would typically serve yourself, because your plate's still going to be full when you fill it up with more veggies and more protein and get rid of some of those carbs. You're going to have the same amount of food, but the proportions of the carbs are going to be a lot different. Choose protein supplements that are lower in sugar. Avoid crunchy snacks, empty carbs. So crackers, chips, pretzels, I don't care if they're whole grain or whole wheat or high fiber or whatever, they're still simple carbs that really don't provide too much nutrient benefit. So decreasing those, it's okay to have a small amount. Do you even need a full portion of them? Be looking at your serving sizes on the sides of the box on the food labels, just to be aware. And then of course, if you have a lot of junk food and sugary snacks and baked goods, those obviously need to be moderated and kept minimal. Okay, next slide. If I can get there. There we go. Carbohydrates. So our carbohydrates, which also are interchangeable with the word starches, you may hear. This includes our dairy. Dairy has carbs. Our yogurt has carbs. Milk has carbs. Fruits, sweets, and our grains. We have what we call simple carbs and complex carbs. The complex carbs have just as many carbs in them. However, they are a little bit better because they have more fiber. So if you're trying to lose weight, strictly switching from white or simple carbs to whole wheat or complex carbs is not going to produce weight loss. It will create other benefits like cholesterol control, maybe blood sugar control and some of those benefits, but it's not going to help with weight loss. So weight loss is going to be both, yes, switch to some of those complex carbs, they'll keep you fuller longer, but then also decreasing the portion sizes. And you can see on the left with the simple carbs, we have our white products, white pasta, we have our crunchy snacks, we have sweets, we have potatoes, and then on the right we have some more complex carbs that are going to give a bit more fiber and some of your whole grains. Again, we still need to portion these things very well. So non-starchy vegetables, these are our veggies that do not have near as many carbs. There's a little bit of carbs in all vegetables, but very small amounts. These are great for weight loss because they do replace on our plates. They replace some of those carbohydrates and they make you feel full. They have a lot of fiber in them. They're low in calories. They're loaded with vitamins and minerals. You can see a list of some of those non-starchy vegetables. I do get a lot of people, though, that will say, I do not like vegetables, or I don't like many vegetables. So that's why we as dietitians are here to help you come up with new ideas for trying them. I know a lot of people that didn't like vegetables, but they've never had them grilled or they've never had them roasted. And by changing up the method of how we cook them or how we season them, we can make a big difference in how our vegetables taste and how we enjoy them, too. I never thought I would use as much Parmesan cheese in my house as I do, but to get my kids to eat vegetables, however I prepare them, just sprinkle a little, it doesn't have to be a lot, but a little Parmesan cheese and they will eat up any vegetable I put in front of them. So sometimes you just have to have new ideas of how to flavor things a little bit differently. Okay, fats. Fats do have a role in the diet. They do, some fat is necessary in our intake. They help to keep you fuller longer as well. And it's also helpful for absorbing some of our fat-soluble vitamins. So the healthiest sources are going to be our unsaturated fats found in our nuts, seeds, fatty fish, oils, olive oil, canola oil. Those are some good, healthy fats. So the ones that we want to be cautious of, especially when we're eating out or making our own meals, gravies and sauces, always ask for those on the side. If you're making a sandwich or ordering a sandwich, ask for more mustard instead of the mayo or oil, because mayo or oil on a sandwich could add anywhere from 150 to 250 to 300 calories to your meal. One little tablespoon of a lot of these fats is 100 calories. One tiny tablespoon. That's not a tablespoon that you use to eat. That's one of those little measure tablespoons. Get your dressings on the side. Dressing can easily add 500-600 calories to a meal. Ask for veggies without butter or oil, or if you are in the habit of preparing your vegetables at home with a lot of butter, see how much you're using. You could easily be taking 200 calories from your meal just by using some different, saute with some broth instead of oil or butter, and that makes a big difference. Getting your foods grilled or baked as well. Okay. So plate composition before and after surgery, this is kind of what you can expect. Before surgery, we do have normal sized stomachs, so our portions are still going to be big. Again, this is not a diet. I find that some people try to restrict their portions to the size of what they think they'll be eating after surgery. That is not what we want to do. You will end up hungry for sure. So right now, kind of think of your plate as just balancing it a little better, putting half the plate full of vegetables, decrease that carb content to just about a half a cup or a quarter of your plate, and then a good portion, a third to the other quarter of your plate be your lean protein. And then on the right, we have kind of an example of what your plate will look like after surgery. Smaller portions. You'll work your way up to a 3 or 4 ounce portion of protein with a little bit of veggies or fruit. And ultimately, you'll be able to have a little bit of carbs sometimes, depending on your meal. But the most important thing is eating your protein first. Patients that do struggle with weight regain sometimes or feel like I can fit more at meals, it is often due to not having enough protein at their meal. And they're having more of the noodles or more of the potatoes. And as soon as I put that 3 or 4 ounce portion food model in front of them and say, can you get this much chicken at your meal? They'll say, oh no, that'll fill me up. Then I can't eat anything else. Well, that's the whole point of this surgery. We want to fill your stomach, your new stomach, up with that protein, so there isn't as much room to fit in those carbs and those higher, more tempting foods. The importance of logging your food intake. So if you do not keep a food journal, or if you have not in the past, you should start today. Don't say I'm going to start tomorrow. I don't care what your dinner is planned for right now or your lunch or the rest of your day, but just start writing it down. The importance of a food log is not to have a perfect log to show the dietitian. We all realize everybody is human, and we want to see the realities of what you're eating and what your lifestyle is like. We can give guidance this way. We can find things that might help, or find reasons as to why you're struggling with hunger, or some ways to just come up with some creative ideas that will work for you, that are realistic for you. But most importantly, this is for you. Writing things down really creates more self-awareness, mindfulness and accountability to your own self, realizing, wow, I do snack more than I thought, or my portions are bigger than I thought, or maybe I'm not eating as many meals as I need to, or getting enough protein not enough throughout the day. So it's a good way to just kind of evaluate ourselves as we're doing this too. So there's several ways to do this. You can log in a notebook. You can pick up a notebook either here at the office from us, or you can get your own notebook and start writing in that. Also, there's online apps. MyFitnessPal is probably one of the most user-friendly. There's also one called Lose It. There's several others out there that I'm not as familiar with, but this is one that all of our staff is pretty familiar with. It's very user-friendly. You log in, create an account. It is free. You do not have to pay for the premium version of it. You can just get the free one. And you put in, it'll give you a calorie goal. Sometimes the calorie goal is a little bit high, so we may adjust that for you and bring it down a little bit to promote better weight loss. And then we'll adjust your macronutrients to get enough protein. And you just look in there, you'll search for a food. So whatever you had for breakfast, you'll search for those individual food items and change the portion according to what you had and enter it. There's also an option for things that do have food labels or barcodes. You can just scan. So if I had a protein bar, I can scan the barcode that's on the box and it'll come right up on the screen, and you pick how many you had portion-wise. And then it adds up, and you can see it'll give you a whole pie chart breakdown how much of your day was carbs. This example was pretty high carb day for whoever's this was. So we want to work on balancing those macronutrients and balancing out as even as possible those carbs, fat, and protein. So things to start today: create your own goals. If you're able to get the goal sheet from us, then you want to pick some of those goal sheets on healthy lifestyle changes to start working on. Start a food and exercise journal now. Log your exercise, log your food, whether that's through MyFitnessPal or on a notebook, that's fine. You will be asked to review this with your dietitian at your first visit. So please keep that and have that with you. Okay, next. There we go. Here's just some helpful resources to use if you need those. We do have a Facebook page, Bariatric Eating, bariatricchoice.com. They have some recipes on there as well. Bariatric Pal and Baritastic, there's some good ones as well. Please reach out to us if you have any questions at all. And next up, we will have our exercise physiologist.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the exercise portion of Class 1. My name is Ryan. I'm one of the exercise physiologists here, along with Kyle and Emily. So we realized that nobody needs us to suggest that we exercise or that exercise is good for them. We all recognize that much. But I think many times it's more important to be reminded than it is to be instructed. And I think this can apply with exercise. So as we go through some of this information, we know you've heard probably a lot of it before, but we also think it's good to be reminded of it. And then secondly, I think our hope is that maybe we're going to look at this in a slightly different perspective in regards to what is exercise actually doing for us, being realistic with expectations. So one of the questions that we often will ask is, when you think of exercise, what comes to mind? So sometimes we will get some negative thoughts, as you can see here on the slide. Perhaps it's been dreadful, it's been not a great thing. But our hope is that when you think of exercise, medicine comes to mind. And that's really how we approach this. Exercise is medicine. For the following reasons. But we also have to recognize that this needs to be consistent. It needs to be a regular part of our life for the benefits that you see here. So treating or preventing chronic diseases. And when we say chronic diseases, what we're talking about is heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, things like that. Being fit and being conditioned, being fit, just being able to do whatever it is you want or need to do because you're physically able to do it. I think that's a good way to look at fitness. So some of us might have goals of wanting to run a 5K, or others, it might just be getting through the grocery store without being short of breath or without having pain in our body. Maybe some of us, we want to be able to keep up with our kids or grandkids. So it's all fitness. It's all relative. Boosting energy. So we know, and a lot of us probably recognize this, that exercise helps energy. It improves our energy level. Being confident about ourselves, self-esteem. We know that this can help with that. We know this can help with our sleeping patterns, so getting more adequate sleep. Stress, anxiety, depression. This is a big one. Mental health. And we don't claim to be psychologists by any means. However, I would confidently say to anyone, this is probably one of the single best things you can do for mental health. So I think this is important to address this, because I think in this environment of weight management, we do get so focused on the physical, but we need to bring the mental part right up front. So if just feeling better, managing stress and things like that, if that's going to be your reason to make exercise more of a consistent part of your life, isn't that enough? Yet we also know that this can help with weight and more specifically keeping weight off. So if this is one thing that you can really take from this class, exercise being medicine, we can appreciate that. So the key to exercise success, we could probably make a long list here, but we wanted to highlight four components. So the prioritization. And I can talk for a long time, I'm sure, of why this should be a priority, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter, because this has to be your priority. Consistency, right? We talk about this a lot. The consistency has to be there. We could have the best workout plan in the world, but if it's only done occasionally, we're never going to get the full benefit of it. Finding your motivation, and what we mean by that is be specific with your reasons for doing it. We could call them goals, right? So identify them, write them down if you have to, revisit them as regular as you have to keep up with your motivation and reasons for doing this. And then finally, make it fun for yourself. We often say that you really cannot mess up exercise. I think that's great news. You can't be wrong. So what you do, where you do it, do what works for you. Make it your own. So exercise versus physical activity, we use those terms interchangeably a lot, and I think it's okay to do that. But if we really get specific, we could differentiate between those two. So exercise, oftentimes it's a structured thing for us. There's intent behind it. We're doing maybe so many days per week, a certain amount of time, and we have things that we're choosing to do for exercise. Physical activity, on the other hand, that's more of a general statement. So we all have heard of ways to increase steps or get more activity throughout the day. So I often think of, we've been told many, many times, like if you go someplace, well, park further away, right, to increase your steps walking to wherever you're going. And then if you have the opportunity to take steps, like if you're walking into our building, we're on the 3rd floor. So take the steps, not the elevator. So we've all heard these things. We know them. But how many of us really do them and take advantage of all the opportunities that are there every day, every week, every month? Because just doing these things one time, well, that's not really going to make much of a difference. In fact, it might cause some of us to feel uncomfortable because it might be hard for some of us. But as we practice them, and we want you to stay within your limitations. We don't want you hurting or causing any problems, but being mindful of opportunities that are there, it adds up and it all matters. Every choice we make, it matters, especially when we're trying to change something. So we don't want this just to be about, well, do some exercise during your week and then forget about all the other hours in the day, hours in the week. No, we encourage you. Think about your day. Where can you build in more activity and schedule some regular exercise for yourself? So both of these things we want to highlight are important. Aerobic exercise or cardio exercise, most of us, if not all, have heard this term before. But I also want to be specific as what we're talking about, because I think sometimes we say words or we throw out these terms and we've heard them, but do we really know what we mean? Because words have meanings, right? So when we say aerobic, we're talking heart and lungs. So aerobic exercise, those are the systems of our body that we're stressing in a good way, to be healthy, and to strengthen those systems of our body. And defining this, we could say aerobic or cardio exercise is rhythmic in nature, typically involving our larger muscle groups, so oftentimes our legs, usually done for a certain period of time. So if you think of examples of aerobic exercise like walking or jogging, biking, swimming, maybe you're using equipment like an elliptical or something like that, you can see these characteristics apply. We also know it's going to increase our breathing rate and heart rate. Again, systems of our body that we're exercising. Probably going to make you sweat, right? Not a bad thing. And in the moment that we're doing it, it is the type of exercise that burns the most calories. Regarding footwear, we just want to say we think it's important. Obviously, if you're doing land-based exercise, and we're not promoting a certain brand or type, it's just really finding something that works for you, because we think that can make a difference. So this next slide, the Borg scale perceived exertion, this is meant to be used to determine appropriate exercise intensity. So this is really all just about a subjective way of determining, are you getting the benefit of it, but also staying within your limitations. So what you see here is numbers from 6 to 20 with descriptions beside it. And color coding is very helpful here. So if we go right to the green zone, so you often may hear us say green zone, that's moderate intensity. 11 to 15, description of fairly light, somewhat hard. This is a good place to be. So if you think of traffic light, right, green light is go. That's good. And if you are in that, so you might be asking yourself, if you're exercising, and I'll use walking as an example, that if this is a 13, it's somewhat hard, you might be saying, okay, well, I know there's effort going. My heart rate's up, my breathing rate's up, but I can still talk and have a conversation. There should also not be any increased pain. So if those characteristics apply, I would say, yeah, that's good. Keep going. Unfortunately, I think oftentimes we think we need to be in the red to get a benefit. So we're trying to lose weight, well, I must have to work out hard. And that's not at all how it has to be. So I think this can be very helpful to recognize that you don't have to go and beat yourself up. You don't have to go outside of your limitations. And the reality is, when you're consistent, if you stay within your limitations, you should start to notice progression. In other words, you can tolerate more. Maybe it's more intensity, more time. That's a natural response to exercise. If you're exercising in the blue, and this might be for people that, they're, really fit and they might need to step it up a little bit to get that benefit. But the green, that's a good place to be. And we can say that all of us, we can find our green zone. We can find it no matter what it is you're doing. And if we were all walking at the exact same speed, obviously there's varying levels of fitness. There's limitations to consider, risk factors. But if we were to ask ourselves, let's say we're a group of 20 and we're all walking, and we asked, how hard am I working? Well, some of us, that speed might be very hard. So we have to reduce or stop if we have to, and then start slower. Some of us might be right in the green. It's a good place to be, so you'd stay with it. And again, those other cases, if you're pretty conditioned and fit, then you might need to walk a little faster to get in your green zone. So I hope that makes sense, and we feel like this can be a valuable tool simply based on how you feel to determine appropriate exercise intensity. So talking about strength training, and we could call it weightlifting, resistance exercise, we're really talking about the same thing, which is involving muscle movement against some type of force. So if it's like the push-up guy there, he's using his body weight, or maybe you have some dumbbells at home, or maybe you're a gym member where there's varying options, machines and bands and you name it, they probably have it. So what we want to promote right now is just, this is an important part of an exercise program. And one of the main objectives is to preserve the muscle that we have. So when you lose a significant amount of weight, you're going to lose muscle. But to preserve what we have, and strength training is one way to help do that. Nutrition, that's another way. Making sure you're getting your nutrients in, staying hydrated. We want to preserve your muscle mass and your strength. Even just day-to-day functionality, we need muscle to do. We call them ADLs, activities of daily living. We want to keep our strength up, just to get around our day, just to keep up with things that we know we need to do. So this is not just about having huge muscles. For those that want to do that, great, no problem. But this is also just important for daily life. So if you're unfamiliar with strength training, if you've never really done this before, we can certainly help you. We will guide you as far as some things to try that are appropriate, safe, but yet effective. So moving on to guidelines, and we present this to you as information. This is not what you have to do. We don't feel it is our job to tell anybody what they have to do. We can all make those decisions and choices. But aerobic exercise, and you'll notice here, this is given in time. So 150 minutes per week at a moderate intensity, that would be that green zone. That is a basic recommendation for health, for good health. I like being able to present this in weekly terms because this does not have to be a set amount of time each time you would exercise. So it doesn't have to be 30 minutes. It doesn't have to be an hour. It doesn't have to be even 20 minutes. 10 minutes seems to be that time. If you can do 10 minutes at a time, that seems to be a good amount of time to get the health benefits from exercise. So whether it's 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the afternoon, or anything, it adds up. And that's kind of the point. And even if 10 minutes is too much, if you have to start with 5, great. Because I think everyone would agree that something's always better than nothing. And right now it's really just about establishing good habits, good patterns, if we're not doing this right now at all. Strength training, you'll notice it's more of a frequency. So 2 to 3 days per week in general, working all our major muscle groups, 1 to 3 sets of 8 to 12 or 8 to 15 repetitions, again, a general guideline. And flexibility or stretching exercises, just another component to this. So once again, we give you this as information. We want you to have it. We want you to know it. And if you want help making some goals to achieve these guidelines, then that's where we come into play to help you achieve those goals that you create for yourself. So just like anything, information's good, but application makes all the difference, right? So exercise barriers, we all have them. We all have reasons why this can be a challenge for us. The common ones tend to be time, physical limitations, lack of confidence, perhaps just not knowing what to do, cost, and that's, I think, more along the lines of a gym setting, and motivation, which appears to be the umbrella one, right? We can fit so much under motivation. And this cartoon, I think, says a lot. It says, wow, that's the biggest speed bump I've ever seen. And, of course, the road to success. So we ought to expect this. And we tend to think in this pre-op program right now, this really should be the hardest time because we're trying to make changes. A lot of us, we know this information. We have a lot of knowledge. We've done things in the past. But applying it, working through our barriers, change, that's the hard part. So we really want to encourage you moving forward. If we are continuing in the same patterns that we're used to, we need to ask ourselves why. So we have to figure out ways to work through our barriers once we identify them, a little bit at a time. So let's highlight a couple of these. The whole time thing, 168 hours in a week. We're using the example of 40 hours of work, and we know some people work a lot more than that. 56 hours of sleeping per week, and that's if we sleep 8 hours per night, which I don't even know if that's happening much for people anymore, but that leaves us with 72 hours left in the week. So if someone were to create a goal, not from an ability standpoint, but just from a time standpoint, that their goal was to get 3 hours into their week of exercise in some way, well, that's just 4% of the time after working and sleeping. So it becomes very interesting, I think, that when this is a priority, and we always make time for things that are a priority to us, how we can start to fit this in, especially when we remember that you can make this look any way you want it to. If you have 10 minutes or 15 minutes here, take advantage of it. We don't have to do this for hours on end at a time. And for some of us, that's just not realistic. So realizing that you can be very creative to make this work for yourself, I think that can open up some doors. So here's a little humor. My whole routine lasts an hour and a half. 15 minutes of cardio, 15 minutes of weights, and an hour of talking myself into it. Can anybody relate to that? So staying motivated, and we don't pretend to think that these tips will cure all our motivation problems, but we might be able to identify and apply some of these. So the first thing we would ask you to do if you're really struggling with motivation is go back to those 4 keys to exercise success. So do you remember what they were? So prioritization, right? This has got to be a priority to you. The consistency, and it's amazing how consistency helps you stay on track with this. Finding your motivation. Now we're talking about motivation here, but what we mean by that is be specific with reasons to do it. Okay, goals. Set them for yourself. Write them down if you have to and review them. Okay, that can be very helpful. And then finally, do you remember? Keep it fun, right? Make this your own. There is no right or wrong with this. So once that's occurring, then keep this simple. Exercise becomes one of those things I think we way overthink, and we forget about the simple, basic things, such as take a walk. Take a walk. That might be, for some of us, a great starting point. And if that's all you did, there's no problem with that. So keep things simple. SMART goals, I'll let you look that acronym up, but we got to keep this SMART. The varietization, endless options. There are so many things, and again, you can't be wrong with what you choose to do. Think positive, be positive. Absolutely, this is a huge one. And some of us, we might be able to identify with this. So if we have a lot of negativity going in, I think the reality is that your actions will follow that. So if we're thinking positively about things, well, forget about what you can't do. What can you do? What are you willing to do? I believe that your outcomes will follow that. So that can be a real important one. Focus on the way exercise makes you feel. And I would add to that, forget about the scale. When it comes to exercise, don't make weight loss your reason to exercise, because I think that's going to end in a disaster. Many of us have good intentions. We want to start exercising more. We're trying to lose weight. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think our expectations, many times, they're just unrealistic. I think most of us would agree that nutrition is the key to weight loss success. You can be exercising hours and hours and hours, but if nutrition is not where it needs to be, we're probably not going to see what we want to see. So I really want to encourage you. Focus on the other things. Go back to that exercise is medicine slide. How's your energy level? How's your sleeping pattern? How's your blood pressure? How's your mood? Ask someone. Ask your spouse. Ask a friend. Ask a coworker. Hey, do you notice? I'm feeling better, right? How's my attitude? Because a lot of times those are things that will be noticed, and that's really cool. Reward yourself. Obviously, we can't do this with food, because when we take the example of the Big Mac value meal from McDonald's, any thoughts how many calories are in that? 1,350 calories, about. And a 300-pound individual walking at 2.5 miles per hour, they would need to walk over 3 hours to expend that amount of calories. Now, we're not saying that we should try to expend everything we eat. That's ridiculous. But what we are saying is, look, exercise plays a role, for sure. But this is not about just trying to exercise a bad diet, out-exercise a bad diet. That's not going to happen. Okay, so we need to make sure these things are working together. And it's amazing how when we're putting exercise in the appropriate place, for example, we want to feel better. We want to be healthier. Yes, we want more energy. We want help with stress management. And so we're recognizing that, yes, I'm incorporating some balanced exercise. I feel better. Chances are you're probably going to want to eat better. And when the nutrition is changing, as I think we would all agree, that's when we start to see our weight loss success. So it's okay to say, hey, exercise is helping me with my weight loss because it's helping me eat better. And I think that's more of an appropriate way to go about looking at this. So let's not try to justify eating something because we've been exercising. I mean, many of us do very well during the week because for many of us, the week is structured. And then come the weekend, it just falls apart and we never get ahead. So nutritionally, if you're going to eat something, choose to eat it, be mindful about it because you want to eat it and be okay with it. We can't go down the guilt road. We can't feel guilty about it. But let's not justify eating something just because we're exercising. So I hope that makes sense. So finishing up here, prior to our first meeting, meaning right now, the sit less, move more encouragement, that's the activity stuff. That's find ways in your day. If you would consider yourself more of a sedentary person, let's just get more movement in the day. Be creative. Take advantage of opportunities that are already there. Specifically with exercise, if you're not really doing a whole lot of consistent exercise, we really want to encourage you start doing something. Pick one thing. Try multiple things. And just start. And if it's doing 10 minutes of something, and it could be 5 minutes. If again you're limited, whether it be with physical limitations or whatever, something, because something's always better than nothing, and that's really the approach that we have to take. And if you think about it this way, I'll go back to the 10-minute example. If you were going to start walking 10 minutes, and let's just say you were doing that 6 out of the 7 days a week, well, that's an hour in the end of the week. It's an hour of walking with intention that you weren't doing otherwise. So you can see how quickly that can add up and we believe can really make a difference. Start logging your exercise. The dietitians, absolutely, they need you to be using a food journal. So add your exercise on there. And I think more than anything, it provides positive reinforcement to yourself. But then also we can help and take a look and see exactly what's going on. So again, our role really becomes just helping you achieve the goals that you've created for yourself. Finally, here is our contact information. So please reach out anytime, whether it be by phone or email. We are here to help you be proactive through this process, and we look forward to working with you moving forward. So we appreciate your time here at Class 1.